Welcome to Intentionality with Paul Kempf, the podcast where we explore the possibilities and opportunities that can be created by a more intentional life. If you like what you hear, and I sincerely hope you do, please follow us, please subscribe on the different channels, and please share on social media so we can reach more people and impact more lives. This is episode 28, and today we are continuing our exploration of FFG and the amazing people that work for FFG. Now, being able to provide professional financial advice to the clients of FFG is incredibly important to us. And one aspect of that professional advice is, of course, qualifications. Yes, experience, knowledge, empathy, care, these are things that are equally as important as qualifications. These are the kind of things we look for in our staff to be able to provide a professional financial advice to a client. But obviously qualifications is important to back up that claim. I did a quick calculation this morning, and I hope I've got the numbers right, and I found this very interesting. In the FFG group of companies at the moment, we have 14 advisors that have passed the very difficult and stringent postgraduate diploma in financial planning to enable them to have the certified financial planner distinction. There's another 6 of our employees that are currently working on their financial planning qualification. That is an exceptionally high percentage of our client-facing financial advisors that have this professional qualification. Of these employees that have done the certified financial planning qualification, 3 of them have already done the advanced financial planning qualification. We also have 5 MBAs in the company, and we have 2 MBAs currently in progress. We even have 1 employee that's currently studying towards his doctorate at the Gordon Institute of Business Science. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will have a doctor as one of the employees in our company. One of these staff members that is currently studying towards his MBA is my next guest on IWPK. So a very warm welcome to my 10th guest on this podcast and my 6th guest from FFG. Christiaan, welcome to my podcast.
Great, Paul, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I feel very complimented to be invited onto your podcast.
Now, Christiaan Wessels is one of the young advisors in FFG. He works out of our Potchefstroom branch in the Northwest Province. And Christiaan is joining us on Teams today. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here on the couch with me. Christiaan, hopefully in the future, if we do another episode, you can come and join me here in Pretoria.
No problem, Paul. It's nice to get out of Potch once in a while. So, absolutely no problem.
Now, so far, we've been doing interviews with some of our colleagues that are in management positions. Some of them are directors within the group. I wonder, Christiaan, if you can guess why I asked you to be a guest on IWPK.
Well, I can guess what it's not. I don't think it's to discuss any pay raises.
Quite correct, Christiaan. You spot on there. No, there's a number of reasons why I asked Christiaan to join us today. The first is Christiaan is one of our young up-and-coming leaders, future leaders in the FFG group. The second reason is that Christiaan has probably had more media exposure than any of us. And I want to hear a little bit more later on, Christiaan, about some of the work that you've done with MoneyWeb, some of the work that you've done on a radio station, but more about that later. The third reason why I asked Christiaan to join us is because I believe he understands the world of investing very well. Now, he's not the only one that understands the world of investing very well, but he's certainly one of those in our group that understands the world of investing well. The next reason why I've invited him is he is the chairman of our investment committee, but the sixth reason and most important reason why I've invited Christiaan to be here today is because he's a millennial. Now, I'm sure you would never have guessed that's why I would want you on the podcast, Christiaan. But here's the reason. I think it's important that we get a younger perspective on the world of investments, a perspective of a millennial. It might actually be far more relevant to a number of our listeners and viewers than my perspective on investments. But before we get to that perspective, maybe let's just try and see if we can get to know you better, that the listeners and the viewers can get to know you better. Let's start with where you grew up, Christiaan. Tell us a bit about your childhood and how you actually got to FFG.
Oh, thank you, Paul. I think my childhood started, I was born in Paul, believe it or not. The distance between Paul and where I am now is quite substantial. But in my early childhood days, I grew up in a town called Porterville up until about age 4 or 5. And if not mistaken, that's also the town where Whitey Basson also grew up. But in fact, there's no correlation between me and Whitey. For both balances, for sure. We made the move to a town called Katu, which is formerly known as Sishan. It may be more well known as a mining town, the likes of Anglo-American and Afrimat, Kumba, etc. That part of the business. And then I did my high school. I finished my matric in Kimberley at Northern Cape High School. And then I moved on to Pucker in Potchefstroom, studied my 4 years here. And that's in short how we grew up in my days. I know you said earlier that I'm still a millennial, and I am a millennial. But in the earlier days, we could have still walked from door to door and asked for donations to go on a sport tour. So I got that part, at least, that was nice to grow up in. Also, cell phones just came out in those days, so and the internet. So I have a bit of both, the best of both worlds, in fact.
Okay, there's a few things that you said there that I've got to just react to, or got to just interrogate a little bit further. So I think the first one was Katu, one of my favorite towns in South Africa, and I'm sure you can guess why, Christiaan.
Certainly not the drinks in Katu, but the golf course.
There you go. Yeah, I absolutely love that golf course. I still think it's one of the best golf courses in South Africa. It's certainly my favorite golf course in South Africa. And then the next thing is you got us now from, Paul to Porterville to Katu and then to Potchefstroom, but you still haven't told us how you got to FFG.
I think maybe just by chance, Paul, if memory serves me correct. I finished my honours here at the varsity and applied for various different jobs all over the country. But funny enough, I think in part the decision was made for me because I then, at the end of my 4th year, actually met my now wife. And I think that made the decision a bit easier in terms of where am I going to shoot my roots for the short term. And it's actually become now a longer term. But that's how I ended up at FFG. And it's been 8-9 years now since I've joined the company.
Wonderful. Christiaan, I need to still get to know you better. It's one thing to know where you grew up and how you got to FFG, but I'd like to know what makes you tick. What is it that you're passionate about in life? What is it that gets you up in the mornings, that puts a smile on your face?
Well, I think that is a good question. I think in part is I like to believe that every day that I wake up, and whether it's over a weekend or come to work, that I would like to make a difference. And I think it is a cliche type of question, but that is really what keeps me going, is to be better than I was yesterday or last week or the previous year. And it's just that rush or that chase to be better and make a difference in the company, in individuals and the clients that we give financial advice to. Because I think that must be a thing that tickles me a bit. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to come into work every day.
It's a good answer. It's not the answer I expected. I honestly thought you were going to say the thing that puts the biggest smile on your face is beating me in golf. But I'm glad that you didn't say that. Christiaan, I mentioned earlier that you've got probably more media exposure, media experience than most of us. Don't you want to tell us about what you've done with MoneyWeb and on the radio?
Oh, it's not a lot of exposure, but I mean, it's some exposure at least, I agree. But I think there's two parts to it. The one is the articles that I've written in the past for MoneyWeb. And I think the reason for that is twofold. The one is to share a bit of one's knowledge with the public. number one. And number two is to help people to make correct decisions. And part of that would be to get exposure yourself, because I think there's so many information going around these days on the internet and various media outlets. I think MoneyWeb is really a platform with really solid articles being written and per se advice given to a certain extent. So I enjoy doing that, and the feedback that you get from readers and the questions that you get is always interesting. So you get exposure on a bit of a different level. Oh, and then second of all, talking on the radio, I've done it a few times now over the last 2 or 3 years, on where I'm with Ryk van Niekerk on the RSG Geldsaken. And that's basically where we answer listeners' questions, and there's various financial topics that we discuss. And always on the other end is another financial expert, if I can call it that, financial advisor. It's always good to hear a difference of opinion. It can make you feel a bit uncomfortable. Over the past few years, I've been comfortable being uncomfortable with the rejection of being live on air. So really something that I enjoyed as well.
Very impressive, Christiaan. I've listened to you on the radio, and your experience certainly shows in the way you're doing this podcast. All right. Back to FFG. Tell us a bit more about your role at FFG, not just as an advisor, but also as the head of the investment committee. What is it exactly that you do at FFG?
Oh, very good question. I sometimes ask that question myself. Well, I started, just told you earlier, I started 8 to 9 years ago, went through all the qualifications of becoming a CFP. And I mainly started out as an intern within FFG in the back office. So I've gone from the ground up, right through the ranks, to become a financial planner. And hence, I have a very good background of the workings in our industry, from the admin part to the whole process, which I think is quite a valuable experience that I've had. My main responsibility now is being a financial advisor and giving financial advice to clients. I work alongside Herman, which I believe you've also interviewed on your podcast. And other than that, I mean, I'm the chairman, as you mentioned earlier, of the investment committee. And that is just to ensure that the company's advice regarding investments is aligned in a sense. And that we speak out of the same mouth, so to say. So that's mainly, and I think you're 100% correct. Being chairman definitely does not mean that I know the most about investments, but I think at the end of the day, you need someone that's responsible in that area. And luckily, I have a good group of members which has more experience than me to give guidance in that sense.
Christiaan, why specialize in investments? What is it about investments that you like?
You bring up the word specialize in investments. It is true that I have a better feeling and understanding towards investments, but realistically, we try to look at client's portfolio out of financial advice point of view. But you're 100% correct. I've always just been drawn to the fact that the investment world and the stock market and the economy, and again, I don't think I understand everything, but since a very early age, from school and then more so in varsity, when we had exposure to stock trading and investments and asset allocation, that tickled me quite a bit. And I think maybe it's the fact behind it that you are able to make money out of it. I mean, you do a certain bet and you are really hoping for the best outcome. And you must understand that there's a lot of moving parts, and those moving parts must make logical sense when you're making investment decisions, compiling a portfolio, or even buying shares. We don't always get it right. We try to get it right most of the time. I just think that spurred my interest towards investments, and I enjoy it. I enjoy reading up about investments and how the economy is influencing investments. So I think the interest part in investments is what makes me a specialist, so to say, in it.
No, you're certainly a specialist. You don't have to put it in inverted commas. Now we get to the important part, to the crux of the matter for me in terms of this interview today. And that is that just because you're so much younger than I am, because you're a millennial, does that mean you think differently about investments? And what's your experience with the younger clients? Do you think they think differently about investments?
No, I think maybe to a certain extent, we think different about investments in the sense that information out there is much more available, and we grew up with it and with the technology, as to say. And I think we're a bit more open to new asset classes and the way of doing things. But I must tell you that in effect, it almost stays the same. The only difference that I've seen is that individuals or millennials or younger people is more comfortable in doing investments on their own.
Mm.
But then again, maybe smaller investments, small monthly premium or etc., etc. But still, I've come to know with the bigger part of investments, they need someone to confirm their decision making and which they can trust. So I think where the older generation wasn't that comfortable in exploring new options, definitely the millennials is more comfortable in doing smaller types of investments and being open-minded.
Speaking of being open-minded, what about things like cryptos and AI? I think firstly, do you find that the younger generation is more open to those kind of investments? And secondly, how do you think that fits into the investment advice we give to our clients?
Well, I think in the past, we must accept that there wasn't technology like AI or cryptos. But nowadays, we must accept the fact that they are there and acknowledge it. I think let me start with the crypto, for example, Bitcoin. People like the effect that Bitcoin has, volatility, which means they can make money. But they never look at the other side as well, which is losing money. You always hear about the people making money, but I agree, it's something to look at. It's not something that I'm very heavily interested in terms of investing in it, because it's so volatile. It's not that easy to understand. Maybe I'm not smart enough to understand it. But where I think that when there is opportunities, there was a time where there was a price difference in Bitcoin through various platforms. And I think the arbitrage regarding Bitcoin was a very nice investment. It was a bit more safe. It was not risky. And I think that's where I saw the millennials embracing that more is the arbitrage part of investing in Bitcoin, and not betting that it will go up and down, but merely in the price difference. Now, and regarding AI, I think we must accept that AI is here. I don't think AI will take over investment advice or financial planning, but I do think that you need to try and incorporate AI in a company or in a practice to assist you in giving advice and in terms of optimization. And so I think that is where that can fit in.
Yeah, Christiaan, firstly on the crypto, I'm 100% there with you. I'm not smart enough to understand crypto. It really doesn't make sense to me. So, whether young or old, I don't think crypto should be a very large part of your investment portfolio, if at all, because you need to be able to stomach the volatility and stomach the potential losses that come out of it. When it comes to AI, I've done an episode on AI a few episodes ago, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. Instead of fearing AI and AI potentially taking over the advice that we give, I think it's important to try and embrace AI in the future. I understand you're currently busy with something really challenging, but also exciting in your life. Tell us a little bit about this MBA studies that you've embarked on this year.
Oh, no, again, I think it was something that was recommended to me by a colleague, maybe a bit more than recommended. But be it as it may, I started with my MBA in the beginning of this year in February. So we've already done two blocks of classes. But just to skip the boring parts, I think, maybe it's a bit early for me to say the effect and what I've learned and so forth. But what I can tell you is that you're constantly under pressure situation, and where you feel a bit uncomfortable. You need to make certain sacrifices. But then again, it was reiterated to us that that's the only way where you can grow and make the necessary changes and come out on the other side as a type of a different person. And people always ask, well, what is a different person? Once I'm through with the 24 months, I will tell you. But I can assure you that there's already been examples of where I've had to make certain sacrifices, where you feel a bit uncomfortable, We need to manage your time a bit better. And I think that's part of the process to grow in those 24 months that you're busy with the course, hopefully. And just think a bit differently. The people that you have exposure to in the class, also lots of different opinions and views, and really quality people and the network that's in that class. And again, everyone in that class goes through the same difficulties and the pressure situations. So in effect, you grow closer to each other in that sense.
Okay. I must say, I'm one of those that loves making you uncomfortable. So I'm glad to hear the MBA is taking you a little bit out of your comfort zone. You look very comfortable in this podcast, I must just say. It doesn't look at all as if you're uncomfortable or nervous. So well done on that. With all of this, let's say, lack of comfort that you have at the moment, you've now gone and done something else. And I don't know if you can share it with us or if I'm allowed to even share it. But I believe you and Carmen are expecting your first child. Congratulations.
No, thank you very much, Paul. The due date in September, so right in the middle of the MBA studies. So I would say it's safe to say that I will be challenged more than most during the next 24 months. But so far, everything is good, and we're looking forward to the experience and the challenge. And I know it's going to be challenging, but I think what's important is just to prepare yourself for it, make peace with it.
You're taking a lot of responsibilities on at the same time. What is it that you do to avoid burnout? And I think even more importantly, as they say in Afrikaans, not to let any, om nie die pap op die grond te laat val met ons kliënte nie.
I think it's an interesting question regarding burnout. I think if you ask burnout, I wouldn't say I'm really near that. Being under pressure, but and juggling a few things, that's maybe more accurate. But then again, various studies show that running at certain stress levels and being under pressure can actually be beneficial to your performance. So I like to see it in that way. Of course, there's times where you feel things are becoming too much and it's becoming a bit difficult to juggle everything. I think it's important. I like spending time with the people nearest to me because that's the opportunity that I get to unload a bit and just be in a casual conversations instead of the 24/7 almost focus. I enjoy that and getting out for the odd round of golf. And I mean, it goes without saying that exercise is also a good stress reliever for you and something that I could be more intentional about.
Speaking of doing intentional things, of course, the name of this podcast is Intentionality with Paul Kempf. Is there anything you can share with the listeners and the viewers? Anything that you do in your life or any aspect of your life where you feel intentionality has really helped you to be successful?
I think if I have to say that something that I've been more intentional about over the last couple of years is being more intentional in listening to people and understanding the other side of the conversation as opposed to just looking at your side of the coin. Because you must remember there's always another side of the coin. And I think that's something that I try to do intentionally and that I really try to better myself in and to make a person feel, or the other party feel heard and get to a conclusion that's benefiting to both parties at the end of the day.
Good one. I like it. We're getting close to the end of the podcast, Christiaan. Any last things that you want to maybe share with us that you do on a daily basis or weekly basis to be more intentional?
Well, I think just, I've read some books the last couple of months and something that I've come to know and that I've tried to be more intentional about is if you look, data suggests that people make decisions between 33,000 and 35,000 decisions a day. A lot of those decisions has to do with negotiating with other people, negotiating with yourself. And there's a book that I read is from Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. In fact, he also has a TED talk that you can go and watch, which is very interesting for me. He was the lead FBI hostage negotiator. So he knows a thing or two about negotiation. And the way that you can pull that back into your own life, your own relationships, in your business, is to really And it's not to say the negotiation that you're always going to be the winner and come out and always get the best outcome for you, but it's to get the best outcome at the end of the day for a group of people or between two parties. And I would recommend that I try to be more intentional regarding his advice there. And I think it would be good if people go and watch that podcast or TEDx talk on YouTube, apart from your podcast, Paul. But that's something that made quite a difference in my life.
Thanks for that, Christiaan. That actually sounded like a tip of the week. Now, I'm sure you've listened to my podcasts before. Well, I hope you have. And you know that I give a tip of the week every week. Was that your tip, or do you want to share another tip with the listeners and the viewers?
Paul, that was my main tip. The other tip is treat your wife very carefully when she is pregnant.
That is such valuable advice, Christiaan. And I will make certain that Carmen gets the link to this podcast so she can listen to you there. Christiaan, I really just want to end off by thanking you for your time today, your valuable time. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for allowing us to get to know you better. And yes, I know we've both been so busy lately that we have not gotten around to a round of golf for a very long time, but I sincerely hope our next conversation could take place on a golf course. It was great having you here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Right, that brings us to the end of this episode. Just a quick thank you to the production team for all their hard work behind the scenes. Thank you to FFG for the continued support of this podcast. If you want to get a hold of me, email address is paul@iwpk.co.za. If there's anything you want to ask Christiaan or get hold of Christiaan, we'll share the links to FFG and where you can get hold of Christiaan on the different platforms. And yes, congratulate yourself for making the choice to live a more intentional life, to be the architect of your life and of your success. And may the rest of your week be an amazing intentional journey. Thank you.